إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. All praise and glory be to Allah. We thank Him and we seek His help and His guidance and His pleasure and His forgiveness. And we seek protection with Allah from the evil whispers, suggestions within ourselves, and from the awful consequences that could result from our misdeeds. For whomever Allah guides, no one can lead astray, and whomever Allah leaves astray, none can ever guide. And we testify that no one is worthy of our worship and our devotion but Allah and Allah alone, the true Supreme King, and that the Prophet Mohammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was His servant and His Prophet and His Messenger, whom He sent as a mercy to the worlds. And I remind myself and you with the taqwa of Allah to be conscious and dutiful to Him as best as one can, and do not die except in a state of complete and total, willing and loving, consistent surrender to Allah, a state of Islam. My brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah Azza wa Jal created humanity as a single family. And the human fraternity is something the Quran asserted and the Sunnah itself asserted. The Quran tells us over and over again that to this nation and that nation we sent them their brother, because he was one of them, their brother Shu'aib, and so on and so forth, the other prophets. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you will not truly believe, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه, until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And as An-Nawawi rahimahullah explains, he meant your brother in humanity, because in other narrations the wording was حتى تحب للناس ما تحب لنفسك من الخير. You will not truly believe until you love for people, all people, the good that you love for yourself. And so this concept is very clear and very established in our deen, the fraternity of humanity. That this is not just intended, this is expected as well. I mean, how can you, it is unnatural for you to be related to someone or live close to someone and not feel more connected with them than someone else, further away in lineage or further away in distance, physical distance. And that is why in our deen we are told that the Prophet ﷺ loved his uncle, though his uncle was a pagan, and Allah Azza wa Jal had to console him for that very reason. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You cannot guide those whom you love. How can he not love his uncle? And that is why we are told in the Quran that if the woman is chaste from the Jewish and Christian women, you may marry her. That is the default rule. Are we allowed to marry but not allowed to love, right? And so for there to be a loving fraternity, bond, family relationship between humanity and those closer to us among humanity is expected and natural. However, what Islam did is that it took it one step further and said the greatest factor in your bond with people is the factor of faith. And that is why your truest fraternity, meaning your truest brothers and sisters, are those that chose Iman. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. That the believers are no less than brothers, are nothing but brothers. Only the believers are brothers. What does that mean? We establish that brotherhood of humanity exists in the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning compared to the brotherhood of faith, everything else doesn't compare. And that is not just beautiful, but it is also very fair. That it is not the things that you have no control over, like what family you were born into, what geographical location you wind up in, that determines the connection between people, but the faith that we all have an equal opportunity at. Because Allah wants us to be united in this way. And the fraternity of faith, the brotherhood of Islam, is something that has always been historically a hallmark, meaning recognized about Muslims in particular. It is one of the most appealing aspects of Islam also, that you truly become equals once you enter the fold. And this is something, Malcolm X, rahimahullah, who I quote a lot, he said, I was not even able to imagine this. Like, it couldn't even exist in my head that this could actually happen until I went to Mecca and saw this was normal for Muslims to see each other as equals. I've been around people from different complexions, he says, that were nice to me, but in the same way, basically, that you can be nice to a dog and you pet it and feed it. They don't see me as an equal. He said, but with Muslims, this was like a given. They honestly saw each other as equals. And I want to really stop at this point, because many a times when we talk about the unity of the Muslims, the unity of the Ummah, racism creeping up on us, this is true. We are not like the first generation. We are not like the purest generation. We want to keep that the ideal, so we work back towards it, for sure. But even with our imperfections today, and in the past few hundred years, we are still, relatively speaking, very different. We are truly blessed to have Islam. Pew Research, for example, shows, numbers-wise, that we are, American Muslims, are the most diverse religious community in America. 100 years ago, in Britain, a famous author and University of London professor, Arnold Toynbee, he has a book called Civilization on Trial, comparing civilizations. Even 100 years ago, even when the Muslims were on the rapid, vicious decline, he said the erasure, or he said the extinction of race consciousness, to be standoffish with people of other colors, other races, he says the extinction of race consciousness is one of the outstanding achievements of Islam. Nobody's done this the way we see these Muslims doing it. Is one of the outstanding achievements of Islam. He said, and the modern world, they've progressed so much, but they still have a crying need to adopt this value that the Muslims have. And so I want you to start there. Appreciate this first. That yes, we might have racism in our ranks creep up on us, but we never had lynchings. Like, it was never like other civilizations. Yes, we have a problem rallying around the leader and, unifying at times, but we enter each other's masajid with a very simple, very basic Google search. This is not common, by the way. To enter any house of worship from your faith, this doesn't exist in other communities. The fact, especially coming out here to the Lehigh Valley, it was even a breath of fresh air, because it's even more evident than the difficult dynamics of New York. The fact that, all the masajid are not under one management, but they can cooperate and have Eid al-Adha together like they had in the stadium. And inshallah, this is ongoing. Just the COVID year, inshallah, interrupted it. The fact that 4 masajid, you may have seen the flyer going around, have agreed a few nights ago to have a moon sighting agreement when they will start and stop together. It was not that difficult. It just required, dedicated effort to line it up logistically, just planning. And by Allah's grace, the other masajid, even nationally, are starting to have this conversation. So we wanted to be ahead of the game. And there's an event Sunday night explaining the details on this if you want to sign into the webinar. But understand and appreciate that Islam said it's okay to be different, right? We're not colorblind. We are distinct people. And that's part of the beauty, that we can get together and work together without being in denial about our differences. Because if you don't notice a difference between your brothers, there's nothing impressive about accepting them. But the fact that we recognize the difference and appreciate the difference and cooperate despite the difference is something very beautiful we should stop and enjoy, reflect on about our faith. Then, to step over now, after you have that in place, then we can say, but we can do better. The Sahaba and the early generations of Islam really were special. They understood that the brotherhood of faith that I began the khutbah talking about demands of a person to see his brothers as more than just his brothers, or more than just his truest brothers. It demands of a person to see his brothers as himself, one body, an ummah of one. This is true. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma used to say, I hear about a Muslim land that is suffering drought, like shortage of rain, that finally receives rain, and I make sujood to thank Allah for this rain, even though I have no animals grazing in that land. Meaning I don't benefit, my animals don't benefit, my herd doesn't benefit, nothing remotely benefits me in the worldly sense, but it's as if I received the rain. Hudayf al-Adawi, it's narrated about him that in the 15th year of Hijrah in Al-Yarmouk, which was a very difficult battle for the Muslims, he says, I went with a little jug of water looking for my cousin after the battle to give him some drink and wipe him down. He said, when I finally found him, I said, would you like to drink? He couldn't speak up. He just motioned with his hand, yes. And so as I was lifting it to his lips, the water, we heard someone moaning far away or nearby at a distance. So he just gestured with his hand. He said, no, like not me, go to him. So I went to him and I find out who is it. It's Hisham ibn al-As. And so I tell him, would you like to drink? He nods yes. And then before I get a chance to lift it to his lips, he says, but my brothers first. He points at other people. He says, I get to the third person and I find that he dies. So I return to Hisham ibn al-As and find him dead. And I return to my cousin and find him dead. This is how selfless they were. This is as the Quran described them. The Quran was not telling them, it was describing them as يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. This first generation, they give precedence to their brothers over themselves, even when they have a desperate need for it. A generation later, Abu Sulaiman al-Darani rahimahullah, he used to say, إِنِّي لَأُطْعِمُ اللُّقْمَةَ أَخًا مِنْ إِخْوَانِي فَأَجْدُ طَعْمَهَا فِي حَلْقِي. When I feed my brothers, not just in the battlefield, even the way I host, I feed my brothers and I find the taste of the food in my throat. As if I was the one eating. Because they are one. That's why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah used to say that the reality of brotherhood in Islam is being an ummah of one, like a single body. When the hand hurts, the eye cries, and when the eye cries, the hand wipes away the tear. We are one. This is how Allah intended for us to be. And the Prophet ﷺ said it best, that the example of the believers in their mutual love and mercy and compassion is like a single body. He said it like that, ﷺ. When a part is hurt, the rest lose sleep over it, and they develop a fever because of it. May Allah Azza wa Jal solidify our ummah of oneness. Allahumma ameen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله. Just one of many actionables towards restoring this concept and strengthening it, reviving it within us and our communities is the table you saw in the lobby. You know, our brothers have taken up the task, and it is not an easy task, to mobilize people and to petition for this bill that is on the table for Congress. This bill to no longer import from the Chinese markets their products, because of so much of this happening at the expense of our Muslim brothers and sisters in East Turkmenistan, East China. You know that the Uyghur population is a population that the UN has failed to hold China accountable, because China is China. But the world has begun to move, because initially they were in denial about what's happening. No, nothing's happening here. But how long can you keep under wraps, even with banning Twitter, even with banning so many platforms? 1 million of our brothers and sisters in those re-education camps, detained. And then in the western regions, they have these vast cotton fields that forced labor of our brothers and sisters is used to service those fields. And I just want to keep in mind, if you're a US citizen, you sign the petition and you send them to those two destinations, everything is set up for you. This is a part of the sleeplessness, part of the agitation, part of the fever that qualifies us as a single body. This must be present. This is close to nothing compared to our task, and we ask Allah to forgive us for what we cannot do. and to enable us to do as much as we can do. But just think, as I close this khutbah, that people that are not one body with this ummah, but genuine, sincere, concerned human beings among non-Muslims have boycotted Nike and H&M because they take their cotton from there, and have raised, proverbially speaking, hell on Disney because it cast a movie out there. And so we should definitely be the most present, the most involved in whatever little corner of the world Allah enabled us some influence or some attempt at influence. It is not about the impact you will have, but it is about the opportunity you are given by Allah to do something. So may Allah Azza wa Jal help us be an ummah of one. May Allah Azza wa Jal continue to bring our hearts more and more together. May Allah alleviate the pains of our brothers and sisters in every part of the world. Among the Uyghur brothers and sisters in Burma and everywhere else where we have a just cause, and they are many. May Allah Azza wa Jal heal our sick and give ease to those that are in difficulties, and spend on those that are strapped economically. May Allah Azza wa Jal enrich them from His endless bounties. May Allah Azza wa Jal have mercy on our dead and guide our children and purify our intentions and cleanse us and deliver us to Ramadan and make us of those liberated from the fire therein. Allahumma ighfir lana warhamna. Allahumma ighfir lana warhamna. Ballighna Ramadan. Irham mawtana wa afi mubtalana. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala imamina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.